Okay, we should be getting started. So, where is everyone today? It's not just that it's a Monday morning, is it? I guess people will be coming in. Or maybe it's because it's Earth Day and everyone is not coming to the climate crisis class to celebrate Earth Day. I don't know. So anyhow, a couple housekeeping things, or the main housekeeping thing. Remember, the midterm is a week from Wednesday in here during the regular class time. You only need to bring a pencil. We will be passing out the bubble sheets. We will be passing out the exam. All the information is on the syllabus, but just so you know, 60 questions. I'm actually going to show you 3 of them today, or sample questions, so that you have an idea of the format. So 60 questions for 30% of the grade, half a question each. You have the whole time to do it. I'll talk a little more about it as we get closer to it. So the other thing is you asked and we have delivered. We have live guests again today. Remember we did the iClicker thing and everyone preferred live guests. We can't do it all the time, so Wednesday Bill McKibben is coming and he's on the East Coast, so we weren't able to do that. But today we have live guests, so we'll see. The goal of the class today is, you see it's sustainability at UCSB. These folks represent the sustainability office here. And that itself is a little confusing because I know sometimes people want to learn about like climate and environment at UCSB. They put in UCSB environment, UCSB climate. But if you're interested in programming and other things that go on, sustainability is what you put in your browser. UCSB sustainability will take you to this office. And just a few highlights. We're going to have a presentation first, and then we'll have a Q&A. Q&A is open. Today is week 4, lecture 7. In Canvas, the Q&A, lecture 7? Is that right? Yeah. The Q&A is open, so please put your questions in so that we can ask. A couple notable things. UCSB, in terms of all the other UCs, has achieved the lowest carbon emissions. We've been working on that at least since 2011 when the former president of the UC, Janet Napolitano, started something called the Carbon Neutrality Initiative. Yeah, we're lower than any other UC campus, and our emissions are pre-1990 levels now, which is astonishing. We're also going to hear about things like transportation, all the bike infrastructure, and things of that sort. So it should be fun. Okay, so let me first do our first iClicker poll. So get your iClicker ready. And here is the question. Starting the poll. Hold on a second. Here we go. Yeah, so in Sarah Ray's book, Field Guide to Climate Anxiety, which of these is stressed as important? These are the sort of questions you can expect. People are responding, people are thinking about it, yeah. So one of the reasons I gave you this question is to underscore that the readings are all going to be represented, including this book on the midterm. The documentaries are going to be represented. The lectures, including what our guest speakers say, are going to be represented, including what I say. So I very well could ask you, where the UCSB is in the ranking of the UCs for lowest carbon emissions, which I just said. But, okay, people are... Oh, wait, sorry, did I just... Uh-oh. Go back. This was supposed to be the one. I might have pushed the button twice. You can hit your iClicker button twice, don't worry, if you put in the wrong one. And by the way, it doesn't really matter because this is not, we're just taking roll. It doesn't matter what you put there. So, should have a little drum roll what people think. D is the correct answer, 324, 96, 418. People are getting the idea. Okay, about that question, it wasn't super difficult. It doesn't mean you have to do like a ton of notes when you're doing the reading. It's a very basic question if you've done the reading. If you didn't do the reading, it's an impossibly difficult question. So make sure you do the readings and watch the films. You still have, till a week from Wednesday, so almost 10 days to do it. Okay, so let me close this out. Let me actually close out of this presentation, jump to this one. It's going to require me to go here. Hold on, I just have to fiddle with some things here. This presentation, slideshow, and open up the closed captioning. Is the closed captioning working? It is. So, who are these three people? They're represented here. Jewel Persed is the Campus Sustainability Manager and TGIF Grant Manager. She will explain that. Katie Maynard is the Acting Director of Campus Sustainability Department. Will soon be the Director of Sustainability, and which is in Student Affairs. And Anthony Zaragoza is a Climate Action Fellow who's actually a student in this class. So, one of the main things I would pay attention to this for is, first off, the Sustainability Office has a list of all the activities and groups on campus that you can get involved in. So there are literally dozens of those. But what's so interesting, because our Sustainability Office is different than most other UCs, is in Student Affairs, we have, and this is the important point, quite a few paid internships, which Anthony has now. Over 70 paid internships. So to be clear, they are, did I say it right? I'll say it the third time. Paid internships. This is unusual. In other places, they're not paid, so you can actually do something. Well, this is like a win-win-win, in my opinion. So a win that you get a paid internship, that you make money. Another win that you're actually doing something about the climate crisis. And finally, another win that you're involved with a group of other people. And I have to say that we just had the director, kind of the director of sustainability for all the UCs here last week, and he was just sort of marveling at the program that we have. No other UC has anything like that number of internships, let alone paid internships, and let alone making it sort of central to the mission here. Okay, so enough of hearing me. I'll turn it over to these folks, and feel free to present. This is Katie Maynard, Acting Director of Campus Sustainability.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, and I'm so excited to be with you all today. We will have a slide at the end of the presentation where we'll be announcing some of the internships that are available and giving more guidance on how to apply for those. So I'm going to start with an introduction to campus sustainability and the history of student leadership that's made our sustainability program happen here at UCSB and UC system-wide. So sustainability at UCSB is a decentralized network. We engage many students, staff, and faculty, and really community partners as well from across the campus and in our community to work on sustainability. We work in a decentralized structure through partnerships, relationships, coalition building, to create informal networks to implement changes and improvements. This allows us to be incredibly nimble and responsive to what the community is asking us for, because we can create different types of committees and task force and coalitions depending on the types of issues that are most important for us to work on in any given year. And so as a result of that, our work really changes a lot from one year to the next, which really makes my job a whole lot of fun. On the slide here, I have some of the key departments where we have sustainability staff. And it's just a snapshot to show you a little bit of the diversity of our structure. So we have folks in procurement, and actually staff on our campus worked with student leaders to draft the UC procurement policies and guidelines for the UC system. So UCSB has really been a leader in that area. Within administrative services, Jewel is actually one of our representatives from administrative services. We also have staff in facilities management and environmental health and safety. We'll talk a lot about those EH&S connections as we get into talking about our climate resilience work. We also have partners in housing, dining, and auxiliary enterprises. They actually hire the first sustainability staff on the campus. And then we have folks in transportation parking services helping us with Scope 3 emissions. We'll talk more about that soon too. Within student affairs, my department was a program within the geography department just 2 years ago, and we have moved and become our own department, which is really cool and a great opportunity for us to really institutionalize and build out the resources and support and infrastructure for our program. And when we graduated from a program to our own department, we moved over to the student affairs division. We also have sustainability staff within other areas of student affairs, including resource planning, capital planning, and sustainability, which is sort of an operational arm of student affairs. Associated students is one of our huge leaders, and we're going to talk a lot about some of the positions that they've created and their early leadership in this. And then, of course, the sustainability department that I'm from. We also have a steering committee. So this is much like any nonprofit you might see in the community. You might have a board. For the sustainability department, our board is the Chancellor's Campus Sustainability Committee. It's a Chancellor's appointed committee. So it's a really great opportunity for us to have a voice directly to the Chancellor because they are tasked with advising the Chancellor on issues related to sustainability. Their mission statement is on the slide. I know it's a lot of text, but we worked really hard on it, so we're excited to share it. It fosters partnerships between entities within, external to the campus, to create an environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable future for all. So 2 big things to highlight there, right? Just like the sustainability department, a lot of our other efforts, it's all about partnerships and relationships and building movements, right? We look at environmentally, socially, and economically. This is part of, before Dr. Hiltner was talking about, what do you search for when you go to campus? Do you search for environment or climate or sustainability? Why do we choose this term sustainability? Well, part of why we look at sustainability is because it is that intersection between environmental, social, and economic issues. And really what we're looking for is to say that there are solutions available that allow us to tap into each of those 3 areas, to be able to honor the work in each of those 3 areas, that you don't have to be either environmental or social justice. You don't have to be either economic or environmental. You can bridge these together, and you can come up with solutions that address issues within all 3 spheres. It's a lot of the basis of our work. The CSC also sets locally adapted goals based on community feedback and brings attention to local and UC system-wide goals, right? Like we want to represent our own community, our students, what our students are asking us for, and we also want to leverage the power of 10, right? The UC system is 10 different campuses. It's one of the largest higher education systems, and as a result of that, we really have a huge power to be able to set a model and an example to campuses across the country, to bring attention to issues of sustainability. And so we want to look at both system-wide organizing as well as community and local-based organizing. We track and report progress because we want to be honest. Y'all are going to probably ask some questions in the Q&A where Jewel and I are going to be like, nope, don't got that yet. And that's okay, right? Like we need to be able to say where we're doing well and where we're not doing so well, where we still need to work on. And part of that is that transparency of how we report. And we, in this, we also include ensuring that the whole campus of students, staff, faculty, and off-campus partners are engaged in helping us work on this collaboratively. The Chancellor's Campus Sustainability Committee itself includes 9 faculty, the campus librarian, 4 staff, and 4 student voting members. By the way, if y'all interested in being involved in the committee at this level, really having an opportunity to give advice to the Chancellor, we'd love to see more applications for those student voting members, and we're getting up to that time where be selecting voting members for next year, so also think about that as a great opportunity to engage. So a little bit of history of sustainability here. So UCSB is one of the early campuses that really took on sustainability. Unfortunately, a lot of it was inspired by a very terrible event locally, which was the oil spill in 1969 that a lot of you may have heard about. And it was so devastating across our entire community that one of the things that we found was way before there was any campus-wide conversation or any system-wide dialogue about sustainability, we saw individual people incredibly moved about what they were seeing in their backyard taking action. And so one example of this is right after the oil spill, the director of Housing, Dining, and Auxiliary Enterprises at the time was like, oh my gosh, how do I make sure this never happens to my community again? Well, I run a housing department. That's not really related to oil. Okay, what can I do in my job that's gonna make a difference and stop oil spills, but like going out and picketing the oil companies, that's not really like what a housing director does. What can I do, right? And so the housing director was like, you know what? I'm gonna hire an energy and environmental manager. At this time, the concept of a sustainability officer didn't exist. There was not a sustainability officer anywhere in the country. Housing departments weren't hiring anybody to focus on energy and environment. But it was like, no, let's figure this out. We really need to make sure that we're looking at our energy usage because that's something I can control within my position in the university. So he proactively created a position for energy environmental manager in the 1970s. Like, that's crazy, super, super early. We also had the founding of the environmental studies program, which y'all probably heard about a bunch about, but just to emphasize that as well, it was a lot of our faculty from the campus and our students, all impacted by the oil spill, going out and going, how do we make sure this never happens again? Well, we have to shift mindsets. And I think that really is something you all are talking a lot about in this class. It's not just about the technical solutions, it's about shifting the way we think about these things, thinking about new perspectives. And this group of faculty had, in some ways, it was reactionary because they're reacting to the oil spill, but it was also incredibly proactive, thinking, let's not just worry about this oil spill. How do we make sure that many generations from now, we don't repeat the thinking that got us here, right? And that was the founding of the environmental studies program. So our students always keep us accountable. We appreciate that. Associate students really took on early leadership in helping to establish sustainability programs for the campus. In 1975, associate students got together and said, there are not enough support systems for students who are biking. It is really expensive to fix your bike. There's not a lot of places you can do it. We need better support if we're gonna support this system of transportation. And so in 1975, the Associate Students Bike Shop was formed. That means this year's 50 years, y'all. Amazing. So really excited for the bike shop. In the 1980s, facilities management hired their first energy manager and also the campus recycling coordinator in facilities management. And then in 1993, students said, okay, well, we've got some recycling in place, but at that point, we were recycling about 3% of all of the waste from the campus. And this one person, facilities management, wasn't able to do it all on their own. And so the students said, all right, let's pass a referendum, and we need to really change this picture so that recycling is a significant portion of our recycling. And so in 1983, the Associate Students Recycling Program was born, later to branch out to include Associate Students Department of Public Works, our composting program. So now we've got some staff in place. We're starting to do some stuff locally. We've got some of the systems going. Oh, and I didn't mention Coastal Fund, but I should have. So Associate Students also has the Associate Students Coastal Fund and some staffing associated with that as well that was also launched fairly early on, and probably, I think, the 90s for that one too. So then California Student Sustainability Coalition. So now you're getting to like little baby Katie when I started joining the UCSB community. I was here from 2001 to 2005. That was like when I was a student here. And I joined the Associate Students Environmental Affairs Board. Was involved in a number of other student orgs on campus. And we were, the EAB at the time was the California Student Sustainability Coalition's arm on the UCSB campus. At that time, we were running under the UC Go Solar banner, and later evolved into the California Student Sustainability Coalition. And so this was a campaign that we asked the university. We said, well, we're seeing amazing classes coming out of environmental studies. The biology program is doing great stuff. Chicano Studies is teaching about environmental justice and urban planning. We're learning all this great stuff here at UCSB. But then we're looking around our buildings and we're going, I don't know about that. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of waste. We're not seeing it in play on our campus. And so the UC Go Solar campaign asked the university to commit to energy efficiency and green building measures across the UC system for every new building and to look at their whole energy portfolio. And this was a campaign that ran a couple of years and passed right around the launching of the Bren Hall. So really cool strategy moment. Bren Hall had just been completed. It was the first LEED Platinum laboratory building. So for the green building space, laboratories are some of the hardest buildings to get green building certification for. And this was the highest level of certification you could possibly get in that system. And it was done at a state campus, UC, under our budgets, under our restrictions, under our low-cost bid programs, right? And somehow we got a LEED Platinum building. It proved you could do it, right? So we were close to getting the sustainability policy passed, but we were still getting some hesitancy from a lot of the project managers on the different campuses. Like, I don't know how to do this. And so we hosted a conference. It was the California Higher Education Sustainability Conference, the first of the series of conferences to come. And we hosted at Bren Hall right when it opened. LA Community College District just passed a district-wide sustainability policy, and were able to get that across all 9 of their LACCD campuses at the time. So we had a model for a system-wide policy. We had a model for a green building you could do at a state campus and be able to get to the highest levels of LEED. We hosted the conference, we highlighted both, we got project managers to talk to project managers and say, hey, it's possible. And all the project managers went back to their campuses and they told their supervisors, yeah, I went to this conference, I kind of know how to do it now. It's possible. And then the supervisors told their supervisors, and the decision makers passed the policy within a few months after the opening of Bren Hall and the first sustainability conference. That was launching of the UC Policy on Sustainable Practices. So that policy was pushed forward by students and staff and faculty collectively working together. This was one of the first movements where we really saw everybody at the table collectively working on something. And over time, that policy has added more and more sections, a food section, a transportation section, a purchasing section. Most of those sections pushed and moved forward by student leadership. We then established the UCSB Sustainability Program, not quite a department yet, that came a little later, and the expansion of sustainability staff and internships. So I graduated right after the passing of the UC policy, and so my supervisor at the time said, hey, you're doing some cool stuff. Could you stick around and help us build this program? And so I had that opportunity, and one of the first things I said is, well, I got here because of student leadership. How do I support more student leadership? So I launched the UCSB Sustainability Internship Program, which at that first year had about 6 interns. We are up to an average of 80 per year now, and over 90 in spring because we have a lot of crossovers right now. We also started writing our first campus sustainability plan and developed a set of indicators and metrics to track our progress. And then just 2 years ago, we became our own department and got our full-time director. So scope, I'm not going to go into every element here, but there's a lot of different things that go into sustainability. Some of the areas you'll see in our sustainability plan and current projects include community engagement and partnerships, obviously our student leaders, academics and curriculum, built environment, communications, energy and climate resilience, which we'll define more in a bit, environmental justice, which we really try to incorporate in everything we do, not just as a separate section, food, laboratory spaces, landscape and biotic environment, procurement, transportation, waste, and water. And I'm going to pass it off to Jewel, who's going to take us into some of our climate work.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jewel Prasad. I'm a sustainability manager and TGF grant manager in our Vice Chancellor's Office for Administrative Services. And I was also a student here in 2010 and 11 at our Bren School. And I actually TA'd in this class, and I worked on one of the policy sections you see system-wide as a student, and that was our water policy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our climate initiatives and greenhouse gas management. So I currently manage our emissions reporting, and we report scope 1 and 2 emissions, which I'll go over in a minute, to the Climate Registry. This is a nonprofit emissions registry in Northern California, and we have a third party come in and verify those emissions each year. We've been reporting those emissions and verifying them since 2004 and have them verified through 2022. I'm currently working on the inventory for 2023. And we report that with the Kyoto Protocol gases. And so a little bit about scopes. I mentioned scope 1 and 2. I want to explain what those are, and scope 3. Scope 1 is really direct emissions on the on-site combustion. So things like natural gas for boilers and heating on campus, our fleet emissions, our emissions from refrigerants on campus. Those are all included under our scope 1, as well as diesel for generators for when the power goes out, propane emissions. And then scope 2 emissions is indirect emissions, and those are emissions from purchased electricity. And then we have scope 3 emissions, and there's 13 different categories of scope 3 emissions, and we don't currently report all of those, so there's a lot of areas of improving. But those are indirect emissions, and we currently report business, university-funded air travel and commuting emissions, but we're extending that scope, and next year we'll have to start including business travel as a whole. So not that just that you got on a flight and fly to the UC office of the president or to a conference, but you also took a taxi or you stayed in a hotel, and those are emissions. So incorporating that whole scope. And then emissions from solid waste as well. But there's also emissions from purchased goods. There's emissions from hazardous waste. There's emissions from water. So there's a whole scope of areas that you could include under that category. And that is a pretty large category as well. So I want to tell you a little bit about our history, and I know Ken mentioned this, but we align with the state policy AB 32 that requires a reduction to 1990 levels by 2020, and we are actually 50% or so below that, and we have historically projected out to 1990, even though we didn't have, we weren't tracking emissions then. And we currently see a huge reduction in our emissions, and that's because in 2020 we switched over to the UC Clean Power program, and we now get our emissions from power purchase agreements through the UC system for renewable clean energy, and that's really reduced our emissions. So you'll see some of the larger areas we need to work on is stationary combustion, so removing natural gas use on our campus. This can primarily be done through electrification, and actually our new ILP classroom is all electric. And we also have a big chunk we need to work on, and you'll see COVID dip and then increase in commuting and air travel. And those are some of the harder areas to tackle that we're trying to figure out, and I know Anthony and Katie are going to talk about it a little bit later. So I mentioned some of the progress so far, but in 2015, we went out for an RP and we signed a power purchase agreement, and we installed over 6.2 megawatts of solar on our campus. And this is about 15% of our electricity demand and 35% on a sunny day. So trying to have as much renewable energy on our campus itself, really focusing in on energy efficiency. And so natural gas use intensity has decreased 35% over the last 10 years. So even though you think about it, in the 90s, we're about 4 million gross square foot, and we're about 8 million, almost 9 million. So we've grown hugely, but we've managed to reduce our emissions. And I mentioned we participate in the UC Clean Power Program and thinking about smart growth. All our buildings are LEED Gold minimum certified when we build. All of new buildings have to be all electric. So no new natural gas usage, really trying to limit that. has been really helpful. I just want to show you a comparison of our emissions, a breakdown. So you'll see 1990, 2019, 21, and 2022. We have to consider scope. During COVID, we had a lot of changes in our scope 3 emissions. So I have kind of an average pre-COVID. But it's good to see a breakdown, and you'll see that scope 1 emissions and then scope 3 emissions are really the majority of our emissions, and our emissions from purchased electricity are close to zero. So last year, I actually was involved in a UC-wide committee that looked at updating our climate policies. And so we had, in 2013, President Napolitano for the UC system launched a carbon neutrality initiative, which set goals for neutrality by 2025. It prioritized energy efficiency, renewable energy, but relied on offsets to meet that gap. And it was great in moving the needle. It helped the UC really push for and create a way to procure renewable energy and prioritize energy efficiency. But it wasn't focusing enough on direct action, and students really pushed a lot of faculty to move away from offsets. So in July, the new policy came out and focused on direct reduction, and it's a 90% direct reduction in scope 1, 2, and 3. It expanded scope 3 to include business travel and waste by 2045. And then each UC campus had to set interim targets to show that we weren't just waiting to the last minute, but meeting those goals along the way and showing progress. And then really investing in direct action on our campus as well. And so including developing a new climate action plan that will show us how we're going to get to those targets. So one of the goals, and one of the ways we're doing this is UC secured state funding, $1 million for each campus, 1.5 for campuses with medical centers, to conduct a campus-wide decarbonization study, mainly looking at that scope 1 emissions from natural gas and how we can move over, and focusing in on engineering and ways we might do that, but also looking at gaps, looking about environmental justice and how we're going to transition workers to make sure as systems change, they're well trained so that they can maintain their jobs. And they're currently developing this study right now. I think the plan is due to UC in July, and a draft should be released soon, and they'll be doing more town halls. But I can drop a link. I should have had a direct link and not a hyperlink, sorry about that, to the website. But if you go to energy.ucsb.edu, they have all the information about the study. I just want to mention transportation. I know Katie talked a little bit about it. We're really a bike-centric campus. We have 7 miles of Class A bike paths. We're platinum bike friendly, the bike shop and the bike committee. And so luckily, in those commuting emissions, 90% of students are already taking alternative transportation. They're mainly walking and biking. So we have huge progress in terms of reducing that. Faculty and staff has been a little harder to tackle. 61% of us are driving in single occupancy vehicles. So I know Anthony and Katie will talk a little bit about some of the efforts there. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of our programs now that we run to really engage campus students, faculty, and staff in sustainability and making a difference. And so we have a PACES program, which I believe Katie started, and it's really focused on green office, and then it was extended to green events and then green sporting teams as well. And we run an assessment program. So we'll work with the department, we'll sit down, interview them, do a walkthrough, and then we'll come up with strategies and changes that they can take to reduce the impact of their office. And we've really focused this on like what you can do as a department. We're not gonna ask you to spend $1 million to improve some energy equipment upgrades. It's really focused on those simple actions you can take and some resources and tools available. We also offer trainings in that and education and outreach opportunities. And we have a similar program for labs called Lab Rats program and a Lab Sync assessment program. So we'll do a similar thing where we'll interview you, do a walkthrough, we'll come in and we'll do metering of some of your equipment, we'll present our findings, and then we'll also provide you with resources, rebate opportunities, grant opportunities to make some of the changes we recommend. And so, and then we do another fun competition every year where the Housing Dining Auxiliary Services, we host a Res Hall Energy competition. And so all the metered student residential halls and apartments, we set a baseline for them for their building, and then during the month, usually of February, they compete to see who can reduce the most energy use. And then we give out prizes for the most actions taken and then the most actual energy reduction. So we're measuring the electricity use of that building over time and comparing it to their baseline. So it's a fun way to take individual actions and then see in your building how that reduces your energy use. And then the Green Initiative Fund, I mentioned that Lab Rats and PACES works and we often find funding opportunities. And one of those opportunities is often the Green Initiative Fund. And so that was created in 2006. It's a first green fee in the UC system. Students pay $3.47. We used to say it was about the amount of a Free Birds burrito, but I think prices went up a bit. And so, that should say 190 or 200,000, sorry, that's a typo, a year we get to give out to grant applications. And so students, faculty, and staff can apply for grants. We get a lot of student projects that help improve the sustainability of our campus. So really focus on the campus itself. And we've always prioritized greenhouse gas reductions, in that. So it's a great opportunity if you have a project idea, you want to take direct action on our campus to get some funding to do those projects. I'm going to pass it back to Katie and Anthony.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about shifting transportation choices. So when we get into tackling transportation emissions, there's basically 4 major areas that we work in. We look at infrastructure and systems, so things like we have a Santa Barbara Metropolitan Transit District that does bus service for our area. We look at the system of bike paths and what are the parts of the bike path system that might be unsafe or harder to navigate. We look at policy and enforcement. For example, if incoming students, if they live off campus, can't get a parking pass if they live within 2 miles of the campus unless they have an accessibility need, right? Enforcement, trying to work on those safety issues again. We might look at pricing, such as free bus passes for students as an example of a price intervention, or for staff and faculty, if you commit not to having a parking pass, you can get a half-cost bus pass instead. That's through our Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. But today what we're going to do is really focus on the 4th of these areas, which is education and behavior change. And this is an area that is really going to focus on some of the human-centered solutions that you all are speaking about in your class this quarter. I think the next one's yours. Or you want me to do this one? Okay. So one of the things we want to focus on is building a culture of sustainable transportation. And so we want to think about how can transportation and your transportation choices help you meet other needs in your life, right? So what about just joy, right? How fun is it to be in a car, get stuck in traffic, try to find parking, oh, there's no parking, driving along on your own, right? Like, it's not necessarily the funnest form of transportation. But if I bike from my house over to campus, I can bike right along the beach, get a nice beach view in the morning, I get a little exercise, get a little adrenaline running, right? Like, one opportunity is just to bring joy back into lives. I used to ride the bus system a lot as my primary form of commute. And when you're taking the bus at 7:30 every morning at the same time for years on end, you're like, Bob, good to see you. You start to meet meet everybody on the bus. You start to connect with the other bus riders that are also commuters and also take the bus around the same time. You start to build friendships, right? I always liked it for that little moment of peace in the morning, right? I running around, try to get my lunch, try to get my coffee brewed, get everything ready to go to school and get everything together. But then I get to the bus stop and I just got to hang out for a little bit, right? And so I stopped at the bus stop. Bus picks me up in 10 minutes or so, and then I get a nice 10 minutes of listen to a podcast in the morning, right? So sometimes like integrating some of those just life moments can really help. Exercise, right? Like if you're if you're biking and you get to bike twice a day to go to work and to come back, at the very least, if you don't make it to the gym, you have those 2 rides. And so, yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, and so this graph just goes to show why we think it's important to create a culture around more sustainable transportation methods. More than half of the students say that they will be biking less often after UCSB. Even though biking is a huge aspect of UCSB identity already, we feel that we can create a stronger community through events and workshops. And hopefully this will encourage individuals to use and share these sustainable transportation methods with friends and family.
Building community is another piece of this. So one of the most popular forms of alternative transportation we have is the van pool service. And so employees will gather together. One of the employees will get a discount or discounted access to the van pool if they commit to doing the driving. And they'll get groups of employees that live together in, say, Santa Maria or Ventura, and they'll commute in together in a UCSB van via the van pool service. You can see this is a group of van poolers that have been riding together for a long time, have strong relationships with each other. And so the community building aspect of it is an important part of shifting those transportation behaviors. Carpool matching is something we had one of our student interns work on this year, and they even did a really cute event around Valentine's Day about carpool matching using a Valentine's Day theme. And we were able to ask different employees across the campus if you're interested in carpooling and would like help finding a carpool match that might have your same music preferences or be coming around the same time or have the same interests in what your carpool match might look like. So that's one of the other ways that we built transportation.
Yeah. And so we believe that the first step towards initiating change is to inform individuals about all the resources that are out there. For example, the AS Bike Shop not only fixes your bike, but they also will give you instructions on how to fix it if you were to encounter any problems in the future. Along with that, there's also the TAP program that provides incentives for using sustainable transportation methods. And some of those are like bus passes and complimentary parking. However, those aren't the only resources, as there are workshops that teach you just the basics about bikes. And some of those basics are using hand signals and the difference between unprotected and protected bike lanes, which just could be useful if you've never biked when you're back home. Oh, yeah. So in terms of familiar with mechanics of the bike, there's a trend that exists. The trend that exists is the longer individuals stay, or the longer the stay is for an individual at a campus, the more familiar they are with the mechanics of the bike. And this same trend actually exists for people performing maintenance on their bikes as well. The longer their stay is at a university, the more prone they are to perform maintenance on their bikes. Therefore, we feel that it would be best to host these workshops as soon as they set foot onto campus.
Oftentimes when we're thinking about our transportation issues, we also have to think about all the other aspects of our life. And sometimes that's also shifting the perspective of what those different commutes could look like. One of the most common responses we get on the surveys that we send out each year about why people don't take alternative transportation is, hey, I gotta drop off the kids at school on the way in. So single occupancy vehicle is kind of my go-to, right? But one of the things we've started to see more and more employees doing is, hey, let's get a little bit of a different bike structure and let's get the kids on the back of the bike. We can drop off the kids to school on the way to bike in ourselves, right? So there can be ways of shifting that. I lived in New York for a short period of time, and I'd always been in car-centric areas where I could always drive to the grocery store. So when I moved to New York, one of the hardest things for me to get over was, how do I get to the grocery store with without a car. I've got a bunch of really heavy groceries. I don't want to haul them many blocks to my apartment. What do I do, right? And so this was something that took me a while to like shift my own brain about how to manage a grocery store run, right? And so one of the first things I did is I got one of these little shop carts that's in the image there, and I started loading my groceries in there. And okay, now I'm ready for the bus. I'm ready for a long walk across the city with my groceries. I can make this happen, right? So sometimes it's like reimagining what that experience looks like, what that trip looks like. And so there's a lot of different things that we have to think about that affect folks' choices. And so just many of the examples, thinking about how do we create a sense of belonging within the bus community, within the bike community, within these different alternative transportation spaces. That means being really serious about microaggressions that people might experience in those spaces, or if they feel that they belong in those spaces, and how are we really working with everybody in those spaces, in events around that community, to make sure that we are overcoming and moving past any form of microaggression or discrimination in these spaces, and that's really important. We think about identity as a commuter. You know, if you do identify as a driver, do you identify as a bike rider? This is one of the reasons why we talked about what do you do when you leave UCSB? Because if you are biking at UCSB because it's kind of the thing to do and it's easier here, you're probably less likely to bike when you leave the campus. But if you really identify as like, I am a bike commuter, right? Then like when you graduate, you'll probably try to find a way to incorporate biking into your future experience as well. There's real safety issues, but there's also perceptions of safety. And that could be awareness campaigns. It could be helping people have the right tools to address safety issues. Sometimes it's a building of confidence around these different systems. There's perceptions of skill or confidence. Maybe you're not somebody who grew up biking or taking the bus, and you're like, I don't know, am I going to get on the wrong bus line if I try this? So like trying to figure, like working through some of those perceptions. Perceptions limitations, like carrying the groceries, right? These are all things we can think about from an English perspective, from English literature perspective, from thinking about using the tools that you're learning in this class to how do we shift the way we're thinking about our commute.
So as you can see by this graph, minority groups such as African Americans and Hispanics are more likely to walk to campus compared to any other ethnic group. In terms of this graph, something worth mentioning is that females tend to bike less than males. The reason for highlighting both these differences in both of these graphs is because we feel it's important to make sustainable transportation methods inclusive for all people regardless of their ethnicity or gender. Yeah. Therefore, we are in works with setting up events such as cultural bike rides and potentially something like a women's bike expo. So those are some things that we have in mind and are trying to do within like the next month or so.
Can you just say? Oh, and we'll pass it to
I have to admit, I'm one of those single occupancy vehicles because I could drive 2 toddlers and I need to get an electric bike. I haven't worked up the confidence to put my 2 toddlers down Hollister to go to Rainbow School, but soon maybe I will. But I was a biker when I was on campus. So I want to talk a little bit about climate resiliency, since we all are seeing the effects of climate change. We're all seeing sea level rise, flooding, erosion. We've had some years of weather the last couple years. 2018, we had the Thomas fires and then the floods. So how can we give our campus community the skills to bounce back after some of these events? And so we've been doing, the past couple years, we've partnered with EH&S and Jim Caesar, our emergency manager, to start working more on climate resiliency. And we started by assessing climate hazards and vulnerability among our campus community. So last year we did our sustainability survey, which goes out to a representative sample of students. And we asked them questions around the hazards they've experienced, the resources they have, how comfortable they feel responding or and what would they like to see. And then we've asked some other groups. In May, we're going to be asking staff, faculty, and graduate students. And a lot of what we found is less awareness around the existing resources that are available. And so we've tried to start highlighting and developing and promoting some of the resources we do have locally. Because a lot of you come here, you might not be as familiar with the local community, what to do if you get one of those signs on your building saying that there's cliff erosion or it's unsafe. Where do you go? Who do you call? Trying to think about giving you guys the tools that are already available to make sure you know how to respond. We have a really great student. She's actually in this class. She's a Climate Initiative Fellow, Sophia, and she has been working on community response training with Jim Caesar, emergency manager. So it's called CERT. We had this program pre-COVID. There was also a CERT club, and COVID happened, and so she's been working to relaunch it. So what she did, she went through the training, and then she actually took the classes to become a trainer herself. And we do peer-to-peer trainings. It's a 3-day class, usually 3 Sundays, about 6 to 8 hours. And it gives you the tools and the resources to respond to emergencies, how to prepare your neighbors and your community. And the nice thing about this is there's actually going to be a class coming up. And I have the QR code if you're interested. The event dates are April 28th, May 5th, and May 11th. And it's over in EH&S. And so if you're interested in this, check out the QR code. It's a really great opportunity. I took the training as well. So I'm going to pass it back over to Katie.
All right, so I'm going to wrap up so we can get to some good dialogue with you all. But I wanted to end also in talking a little bit about policy change and how we try to make changes in a large institution, a large university space. So I've talked a bit before at the beginning about building coalitions, but a lot of what we do is try to think through who are all the different people that might be affected by something that we want to try to create on the campus. We think about who are the key decision points across the campus. We think about who's actually going to implement this thing, right? So if we want to create a new green building policy, we need our project managers to know how to build a green building, right? If we want to try to shift the way that we're doing landscaping practices, how are we engaging our landscapers on campus and really making sure that they have the training, the resources, the support, the work time to do the things we're asking them to do. And so we look at all the different people that would be involved in implementation. We look at all the folks that might be impacted. We look at the shared governance at the UC system. So one of the things that really appealed to me about working for UCSB is the excitement around thinking about how do we pull in students through associate students, faculty through academic senate, staff through staff assembly and chancellor staff advisory committee, and working with these different governance structures across the campus that represent our students, our staff, our faculty in each of the decisions that we make. And so we try to think about how can we pull in everybody who needs to be involved in these conversations. We also try to think about something that I pulled from Midwest Academy. So Midwest Academy is a training institute that works with a lot of nonprofits and grassroots movements across the country. And they have this this handout that they've developed and training that they've developed over time about choosing issues and like how do you choose what issues you want to work on. And one of the things we always think about is this something that's deeply felt? Is this something that's widely felt, right? So deeply felt is if I get to choose one project to work on this year, this is the project that I want to work on. This is the thing that is going to make my heart sing. This is the thing that keeps me up at night, right? Those are the things that are deeply felt. Something that's widely felt might not be something that's as important to you, but kind of everybody on campus is like, yeah, we should really do that. And so it might be something that across the board you can get really high votes, support, engagement on, but maybe at a lower level, right? So we think about how do those two play? And then, again, how do we build those two? So if it's not deeply felt yet, What sort of education can we do? How can we connect to people? How can we get stories out to folks to help them connect to the issue at a deeper level? How can we raise broader awareness about these issues to make it more widely felt? We try to connect to the core mission of whoever we're working with, really. But certainly within university work and trying to do institutional change, we try to connect to the core mission of the university, to campus goals, such as other types of plans that have been written and developed. We look to what the senior leadership is excited about and what their goals are in a given year. We also try to connect to the values of our partners, such as our student leaders, other staff groups, other departments, or programs on the campus. And how can we better connect the work that we do to the values that they hold true and that they're working towards, and try to build those connections. We look at, and this is part of why it's so important for us to do this work more intersectionally and not just look at this as an environmental movement, but really think about what are the connections to social justice, what are the connections to the economy, what are the connections to the issues that our community here in Santa Barbara really cares about, and how do we build those intersectional connections. That's gonna build us better coalitions. It's also just gonna make sure that we have better plans and better projects, right? Because as we start to think about all those different lenses, the projects keep getting better and better because we're looking at all the different impacts that we might not have thought about otherwise. We also try to center a long-term strategy. So if you think about different goal-setting processes, we might have short-term, mid-term, long-term goals in your vision, right? We always start with the long-term vision, the long-term goals and the vision. Think about where we want to go. And then from there, start building short and midterm goals that'll get us to that long-term space. They might be a baby step. They might be just an initial direction in that way. But if we know where we need to go, if we know where our community wants us to go, then we can start doing little steps that are moving us towards where we need to be. So that's another part of our strategy. All right, I'm gonna get into a couple of announcements and then open up for dialogue because we're really excited to chat with you today. So first, the internships that Dr. Hiltner highlighted before. We do have several of them. We have moved to putting all of our internships on Handshake, so that's the place to find them. This is the UCSB Career Services Job Posting Board Handshake. All of the positions are there. You can find all the positions by searching us as an employer, UCSB Sustainability, and then see all of the things that we have posted, or you can do it by the individual job posting. So Anthony's position, Anthony is actually graduating, so his position is up for grabs right now. It's our Sustainable Transportation Pilot Program internship with the Carbon Neutrality Initiative. We have a Climate Action Initiative fellow that's focused on climate resilience, so that's a lot of the resilience work and the CERT trainings that Jewel was talking about. We have garden coordinators for our family student housing and also a garden coordinator at our partnership garden with the University United Methodist Garden. That is a non-denominational position but does partner with the church. The church is an open and inclusive church that welcomes the LGBT community. We are also looking for a bilingual Spanish and English garden education coordinator, and this person would help to develop lesson plans. We work a lot with St. George's Youth Center out in Isla Vista, sometimes with the Boys and Girls Club and the Harding School, and then we also do education for college students here at UCSB. We also have a second climate action fellow that has a very similar name, but this one's focused on communications, outreach, and marketing. So make sure to look at the descriptions because the names are a little bit overlapping. And then we have a broader communications intern for our sustainability program. So those are all active right now. We are hopefully looking for folks mostly that'll be here this summer. So we are looking for folks that are around. These are all paid positions as well. We welcome work study applicants. And if anybody has just additional questions, we're happy to answer those for you. We also have a bike infrastructure tour coming up. So I talked a little bit about some of the student leadership that we have on the campus. And one of the things that students have really taken an amazing role in here at UCSB is helping to build out our bike paths. So we're going to be doing a bike tour that'll go around campus and highlight some of the different areas of campus that students have really taken a lead in helping to redevelop and redesign and make better for bikers. If you're interested in like urban planning or transportation education, working for a city at some point around like urban infrastructure. This is gonna be a really cool tour because they're gonna highlight a lot of like different interventions being used on campus to improve the bike system. And then we also have a group ride to the movies, and you're gonna get a bunch of free lights for your bike, so it'll be really fun. So we're gonna be meeting here by the residence halls, helping you dress up your bike with a lot of like cool lights, and you get some safety lights if you want, or if you want to go really fun with it, we have multicolored lights you can put around your wheels. And then we're gonna be doing a ride through Isla Vista and up to the movie theater, watching a movie, and then bike it back together. So just a little bit of cultural celebration of the bike. And now we're going to move to Q&A. I'm going to put up all our contact information up here. Do please reach out to us if you have any questions. We love engaging with students. If you have an idea for a project that you want to see happen on campus, we're always excited to hear your ideas or even give you some support on like how to move forward with those. And as we move into the Q&A, really feel free to ask anything that you want. We don't mind critical questions. It's really important to get honest and open dialogue. So please ask anything that you might have percolating.
Take the mic. Take the mic over there. Yeah. Okay. First, thanks to the sustainability team for coming today. Absolutely terrific. What I'm going to do here, however, is switch around just a little. First, get rid of you. Just give me a second here. To P. Go to external. Sorry. As you can see, we're getting ready for another poll. Make sure this is our correct one. And just give me a second to get the closed captioning working again. Okay, starting this poll, and then we can get to our Q&A. In Soylent Green, how is climate change mentioned? That's the question. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A for lecture number 7. I see they're in, wow, we have a number of questions already. So you can just look at this. I will shrink this down. First, let's see what the answer is. Yeah, the answer is, in fact, A, and look at all the people who are getting it right. Most people had it right anyhow, but it is a tricky question, and you do need to have watched the film to have gotten that answer correct. Let me just go up here. Okay, so just a quick comment. How remarkable is it? I mean, if you're familiar with like COP21 and the idea that we're trying to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, people need to calm down now. I know it was an exciting presentation. But we're trying to globally reduce emissions. We haven't done it since 2015, the Paris Agreement, at all. And yet UCSB is already below 1990 levels and significantly below those levels, which is pretty extraordinary. But why listen to me talk? How is UCSB sustainability work on food sustainability on campus? If not, why not?
I'll take that one. So we do, in a variety of ways, work on food sustainability. One of our strongest partnerships is with the UCSB Basic Needs Program. So we actually co-staff the Food Security and Basic Needs Task Force in support of Rebecca Segundo, who's our Basic Needs Manager for the campus. And we've served on that task force since its second year in place, and also been a program partner with them since their founding. We we run a number of community gardens. So we run the Edible Campus program, which in some cases runs community gardens, in some cases supports existing community gardens or provides volunteers, interns, or educational programming to different gardens. We work with the St. Michael's Community Garden, the Isla Vista Community Center Garden, the Methodist Community Garden. Those three are all in Isla Vista. And then we also support the two family student housing gardens, Greenhouse and Garden Project, Isla Vista Recreation and Parks District, and some light support with the Three Sisters Four Directions Garden as well. So a lot of stuff around like community garden and growing your own foods. We also do collaborate with our dining commons. One of the things that we're actually really excited about this year, when I'll give a little history going into it, we had a group of students that were really excited about food recovery and started a program called Food Cycling that was about 10 years ago, got one of its early grants from the Green Initiative Fund that Jewel manages. And that program took like the AS Bikes model of biking around, collecting food from different eateries around the campus and then donating it to the campus food pantries. And that program, through the Basic Needs program, actually got institutionalized into the dining infrastructure, which was actually a really good move for us. It brought new staffing, more funding support. It became a main core part of the Dining Commons mission. And we had some pauses in that program during COVID, but as of January 1st of this year, we have brought back the food recovery fully and have actually expanded it significantly. So now we do food recovery at all of the dining commons, and we also do food recovery at Carrillo Dining Commons, which has the catering kitchen. So any food brought back from catering events has the opportunity to go through the food recovery program at Carrillo Dining Commons. So that was a major expansion to our food recovery efforts that just got started. So those are a few highlights. Happy to talk more about other elements of our food programs. If there's more specific things you're excited about, throw another question and I'll go into those too.
Okay, just going to keep go rapid fire so we get to them. And Jewel, this one you might want to approach. Do you have any suggestions for graduating students, undergraduates, who are itching to get and stay involved in sustainability projects? I don't know if you wanted to mention Bren or...
Yeah, for undergrads, I think Bren is a great program, and they're actually doing, I think it's this Friday, their public presentations. So at Bren, instead of doing a master's thesis, you pick a project to work on. And so local community organizations, UCSB, companies, nonprofits, they submit proposals to have a group of Bren students work on, and then a committee reviews those proposals, and then you as a student, you like put points towards the ones you work on and you're selected. So as a student, I worked on a water action plan for the UC Santa Barbara campus, and Mo Lovegreen, our former sustainability director, and Katie Maynard, they were our clients. So it's a great way to build hands-on experience, to get experience working with local government, community organizations, universities, who then pick you up and hire you. So I think that's a great opportunities for undergrads that are looking to extend and attend graduate school. I think there's also a lot of volunteer opportunities in the local community and on campus. So getting involved while you're a student, you make those connections, and then you can continue to do that work and engage once you graduate as well.
Yeah. The Bren School, of which Katie is a graduate, really on this side of the US, there's really nothing like it, and I would argue nothing like it anywhere. It's a master's program. But let me jump. Does UCSB sustainability work for advocating for divesting from fossil fuels, and to a larger extent with fighting against for-profit companies such as big oil and military complexes that fight overseas for oil? I'll just add, we have someone who was one of the people that brought about the UC divestment from fossil fuels coming to speak in a couple weeks. But if you folks wanted to address this?
So UCSB Sustainability did work with UCOP's investment office while the students were calling for the UC Fossil Free campaign. And so we did what we could with working inside the system. And this is one of the things that we do a lot of is try to pair projects that are happening sort of outside the system with efforts that we can do inside the system. And it's important to think about like this as you're graduating, kind of what part of this game do you want to be a part of, right? And so we have community organizations, student organizations that work really hard to raise importance and attention to issues, who can speak freely and openly about exactly what they want to see happen, that can be more ambitious in their goals and can call us to task, which is super, super important. And these are groups that kind of work a little bit outside of the system. And then you have folks like Jewel and I that work for the university, that we look for opportunities inside the system of how can we support those student organizations. And so, for example, in some of the early work of the UC Go Solar campaign, we were able to get some students to be able to sit down with folks on our campus and UC system-wide that work in investments to try to create opportunities for them to have a space to speak and advocate for the things that they wanted to see happen. We worked with the UCOP Procurement Investments Office around the STARS program, and we're able to say, hey, you know, there's this great green rating system that the UC's really supported through the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, and they have this whole section on sustainable investments, and we're not doing so well at it yet. Can you all do anything? Like, what can we do to create change in this? And so we were able to create another voice to campus administration about the importance of like where this might support or help them. In our office, we're relatively low in the university, so we don't have like the final decision making within that work, but we're able to help create those conversations, create those spaces, help students get audiences that they might not have otherwise. And that's a lot of the role that we did. But I do have to say, when it comes to the fossil-free divestment, the real leadership, the real success came from our student leaders who led the UC Fossil-Free Initiative.
Yeah, and one of those leaders, maybe the primary leader, Theolis Kane, who's a student here, will be coming back. He's a professional activist now. I'm going to never get to all the questions, sorry. I'm just scrolling down to getting questions that are being commented on already with other questions. So one of them is, how do you feel about the lack of run-over meal plans at UCSB and UC campuses in general? And then someone added on to that, does UCSB sustainability support the meal swipe rollover campaign currently happening on campus?
So the meal plan structure is determined by the dining commons. It's an interesting one to like take a look at and try to understand better, because the way that they have their budget system that's structured is they have a pretty good sense of how many meals folks are going to come in for, and they build that into their budget structure. And so if we did a full rollover of all meal plans, likely you would see meal plan costs increasing, because the meal plans that are sort of not accounted for now are already built into the budget. So one of the ways that we tried to address this within sustainability is we partnered with the Basic Needs program and with the SWIPES program, which is not really active right now, but was a student-led initiative that allowed students to donate their swipes to other students on the campus. And so what we started to do is we looked at the SWIPES program, which was really successful. They advocated directly with the dining commons to allow a certain number of SWIPES donations each year to go and be distributed through the food pantry, entirely student-led and driven. And we thought this was such an amazing program. We wanted to try to figure out how do we support this more, but also understanding some of the budget limits of the dining commons. And so we worked with the Basic Needs program and the new state basic needs funding that was available, and we negotiated with the dining commons to allow for a lower cost swipe amount that we would be able to distribute to students across the campus. So we do actually now have about 50-ish locations across the campus that are that have meal swipes that they're able to donate to other that they're able to donate to students in need. And we've been able to like build out that program as a way to look at some of the meal plan rollover. Happy to talk more with folks about that, but it is something we're looking at.
So we're going to have to stop there. Thanks again to the UCSB Sustainability Office. So the final iClicker question is up there. To the 9 people said, that she swipes on him in a dating app? No, it is in fact number C. Okay. Is that yours?
Yeah.
I didn't want to make sure you didn't leave without it.
I always leave it.